All right, welcome to this webinar today. It's the second of 4 in our series of webinars, all based on the product of Lutheran Service Builder. Today's topic is bulletins and bulletin formats. My name is Tim Burke and I'll be the presenter today. I'm a software support technician at Concordia Technology Solutions, and working with me today as support is my colleague Taylor Brown. She is also a software support technician, and she'll be helping us out on the back end of things. So you really won't see her on the webcam, but she'll be supporting us by helping out with questions that are asked throughout the presentation. Our training is in 4 sessions. Yesterday we covered service planning and global search. This series of 4 sessions kind of builds from the ground up. So we talked about just bringing our resources together in a service plan, and talked about how to search for elements and search the database for service elements that we might be interested, a hymn, a scripture, part of the lectionary, a prayer, just ways of doing that. So if you missed that yesterday, make sure that you find a recording of that and view that if you need a review. Today's topic is bulletins and bulletin formats, so we'll jump into that in a moment. Tomorrow's session, just to give you a heads up, is on presentation and presentation formats. That would be like PowerPoint or Media Shout presentation in your church. And then the final session on Thursday is on My Worship resources and other add-ons that we have. All right, but today's is bulletins and bulletin formats. We have a lot to cover. A little housekeeping here. First of all, I plan on about 50 minutes for presentations, so there's a lot to fit in those 50 minutes. So we need to get moving here. 10 minutes are scheduled for questions at the end to kind of round out the hour. Did want to let you know that attendees are muted, so that we can get through the presentation without interruption, but we do want you to ask questions throughout. So use the questions window on your side of the webinar interface to ask those questions. And that's what Taylor is here for, to help us out in that area and answer those while the presentation is going on. And then just as a reminder, a recording of the session will be shared after the series has completed. You might need to give us a couple days to get the videos edited, make any changes that we might need, and then you'll be sent a link. It is, I believe, via email, and you'll be able to watch those. Even if you missed one of the 4, but you registered for all 4, you'll have a link for all 4 videos. All right, our training goal for today is by the end of today, you will know how to prepare a complete service folder and export it from Lutheran Service Builder. The outline, some of the topics we'll be covering is inserting, selecting, removing service elements from our order of service. We'll talk about changing how elements appear in the service folder. We'll talk about saving custom liturgies. We mainly use like the main 5 divine service settings, setting 1 through 5. But we'll talk about tweaking those and then saving that modified version for use in the future. Then we'll also talk about the customizing bulletin formats for your use there, and then exporting those bulletins as well to Microsoft Word. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'll bring up my internet browser here, and we're on the Lutheran Service Builder website. And once again, that's app.lutheranservicebuilder.com on the internet, and you'll arrive here on the calendar view. Now, the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you are signed in. In this case, I'm not signed in yet. I see the sign in prompt here in the upper right corner, so I'll click on that, and then I'll sign in with my email address and password. Click sign in. And now we're still on that June 2023 month, but we do have my particular account in view here, and the work that we did yesterday. We worked on June 18th, Sunday, June 18th, the third Sunday after Pentecost. And we also copied that service and created a test. We could rename that, possibly copy, and we'll see how that goes. So let's kind of do a quick recap of where we left off yesterday. I'm going to click on the service that we begun yesterday, and we'll arrive here in the service plan view. So this is kind of where we ended off. Just a quick recap. We've got the service plan view currently on display. There is right to the left of it the tab for the propers view. So if you click on that, you'll see all of the propers for the readings for the given day. Let's go back to the service plan. So yesterday we talked about how in the service plan, this is really pooling together your resources. It's not planning where they go yet. That's what today's session is covering, but it's bringing those resources together in one area, in one service plan, so that it will help facilitate putting those resources in the order of service where they belong. So we've got several sections here. The readings are brought in from the lectionary automatically, but we can add new readings. We talked about that yesterday. We have a section here of hymns, and we selected a number 4 hymns that we may use in our order of service. We also decided on the order of service that we would use Divine Service Setting 3. There's also a place here for additional rights, for setting up how many services you have on a weekend where you will use this service, and that will help tally up the copyright usage for your weekend services automatically in the background. And then there's a section here for any notes that you might want to have on the service and share with others that you might be collaborating on. We also have here, now that we've come to the service plan view, our calendar view, which is still accessible by clicking on the cross in the upper left corner, but it is displayed here in this left side panel. We're right here on the third Sunday after Pentecost. Here's our copied service that we did named Test. Let's click on that one for a moment. This is showing the service Test. And I'm just going to go ahead and change that name here real quick from Test to, let's say, Copy of Service. And we'll save that. So that has updated the name of the service here at the top, as well as in our calendar left column view there. And I'll keep this copy of the service because there is an additional right on this one of baptism, and I'm going to show how that is worked into the service as well. But at the moment, we're going to go back to our main service that we worked on yesterday. So the whole process of starting a service here in Builder is we started yesterday looking at the propers, and then we stepped through to make this service plan. Now our next step today is bulletins and bulletin formats. And so for that third step, we move here to the upper right corner. You can see a link here to prepare a bulletin. There's also the possible fourth step of preparing a presentation, which is tomorrow's session. And then there's the possible fifth step here of preparing a playlist, and we cover that on Thursday under My Worship Resources. So you can kind of see the steps through the process. You got propers first, you work on the service plan next, and then you go to prepare bulletins. So I'm going to click on that, and we'll pick up there. So here in prepare a bulletin view, you'll notice that your order of service, now this is based on Divine Service Setting 3, that's the order of service we chose, the liturgy, and it has it presented here in a continuous form. We've chosen that instead of presenting it like Microsoft Word would do page by page, and it's just easier to work with a continuous form. I'll use the scroll bar here on the right side and show you that it scrolls all the way through the service. Let's go back to the top here. So we'll begin here at the very top of our order of service. And let's also talk about the navigation bar here at the top. First, there's the cross that would take us back to the calendar view. There is an undo and redo arrows here in the upper left. Then there is the tab document, and this is similar to Microsoft Word, where you have tabs at the top of the application that will present different information. This one is showing things about your order of service as a document. The insert tab will then give us some other tools underneath that, as you can see as well. And let me go back to document. That's where we will begin. And then on the far right side, you do have another menu option here. It's saying the third Sunday after Pentecost. If you click on that, then we've got, in a way, those 5 steps we just talked about: the propers view, the service plan, step 2, bulletins. And that's bulletins. The third step might be where your work ends. Maybe you don't use PowerPoint presentations and you don't use the playlist. And so this might be kind of where your path of responsibility ends, but that is accessible up here. You can switch between any of those 5 by clicking on that link. And then we've got the settings gear here in the upper right, which we covered yesterday. Now that we have the document tab selected, there is a toolbar underneath there, and we've got a button here to export this order of service. When we're done editing it, we can do that to Microsoft Word, docx file, an RTF file, which is rich text format, and also an HTML option. Then we've got our bulletin format. We're going to be talking about that in a little bit, formatting the way that our order of service looks. The edit button that appears to the right of bulletin format applies to editing those bulletin formats. So we'll talk about that in a bit. Now, from our service plan, that Divine Service Setting 3 that we chose is carried over into this view. So this is showing us which service we selected in our service plan, but it does give us a drop-down menu if we wanted to change last minute, maybe to Divine Service Setting 1, one of the other 5 settings. We can scroll down. We've got, again, all of those other orders of service that we talked about yesterday: the daily office, matins, vespers, morning, evening prayer, other services like funerals, Good Friday. Scrolling down a little bit farther, seasonal rites, here's baptism, on down the line. So you would still be able to change your order of service. I could click on Divine Service Setting 1. It's letting me know that we're changing the whole liturgy to a different order of service. We can continue. And now at the top, it does show that we're in Divine Service Setting 1, and that's the way the layout will be in this continuous order of service. I do want to go back to the one that we selected, Divine Service Setting 3, and we'll confirm that. And now we're looking at Divine Service Setting 3. The Save button that appears to the right of the order of service is saving any customized view, any modified view of the order of service that you may have created. So this is where creating your own custom liturgies comes into play. We can, which we will in a moment, be stepping through this order of service, making changes on how elements are displayed. And once we're done, we can save that modified version and then use that one from this point forward instead of the normal default Divine Service Setting 3. So that's a way of tweaking the order of service to the way your church uses it, saving it with its own new custom name, and then we can refer to it later on. And then the button to the right of that is the web view. This view allows this order of service to be viewed on the internet, and that's where we might use your cell phones a little bit later on if we get to that. So let's step through the order of service. The way this works is as you hover your cursor over different elements in the service, you can see a faint background and a block put around each individual element. And I'm calling each little line, each row that's boxed off a service element. And you can find out what that element is just by clicking on it. And when we click on it, you'll see that the focus of this view then opens up a new tab at the top, and then the toolbar underneath it is appropriate for the element that you've clicked on. So this confession and absolution is a heading. We can change that heading if we'd like, or add some words if we wanted, just by clicking in the block here. It kind of turns your type blue and it puts your cursor on the end, and we could add anything to this heading at that point, click away, and it would be edited right there on the screen for what you wanted that heading to be. I'm going to go ahead and just keep it the default heading, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that you could change those headings to read what you'd like it. The toolbar for the heading is either move or delete. If you click on move, that gives the application some direction on giving lines in between each element. So if you wanted to move the heading underneath the hymn, I'm selecting this blue line here where the placement would be, and it moves the heading then beneath. So that's what that move button is. The delete button is straightforward there. Let's move this back to its top position there. If we click on hymn of invocation as an element, watch what happens here is a new tab forms at the top, hymn of invocation, and when I clicked on it, the search panel opens on the right side. I need to select a hymn that goes into that slot or that spot in the order of service. And you'll notice here at the top of the search panel, this is my list of 4 hymns that I chose from my service plan, as the section title shows. Underneath that, it will be the normal hymns for Proper 6A, in this case next Sunday, that the application suggests that are based on some of the readings and also the propers, the hymn of the day, 571. And that's why we chose 571 as part of the resources that we may use. So working with that service plan places those things you've already pre-selected in a way and places them here at the top. And now this is where we need to select where those hymns go that we selected yesterday in our service plan. Let's just say that for this hymn of invocation, I'm going to use the second hymn, 586. I need to click on that, and then it puts that hymn in that spot here in our order of service. And now that this element here is still selected, the toolbar is appropriate for this hymn. You can see that there's a button for caption. If we unclick that button, it removes the caption of that hymn. Putting the caption back on, we'll put hymn of invocation, 586, preacher you the word. Next to that is a set of 3 buttons which apply to the stanzas. Do you want the stanzas in text form, which is currently selected? Do you want to add melody? By clicking that button, that gives then the melody on the hymn. If you don't want neither text or melody, you can select none, and then it's basically just the caption of the hymn. Let's go back to text in this case. Then following that toolbar option is stanzas. You click on that button, and then this hymn has 6 stanzas. So you can choose whichever stanzas you want. Let's just go with the odd stanzas, in this case 1, 3, and 5. And you'll notice as I unchecked the other stanzas, then it removed stanzas 2, 4, and 6 from our order of service. Within that button, you also have a select all or select none, whatever you'd like to use in any of those options. Let's just go back to the odd numbered stanzas. And then also notice here within this element that the sub caption, which is here in the upper right, will also stay in sync with the stanzas that you've chosen. So it says stanzas 1, 3, and 5 in this case. And then the other options we have are to move it, like we did the heading earlier, as well as delete this element entirely. Next, as we scroll down, we can click on the word stand, and that is a rubric. So you have the option to move that or delete it. If you're not using rubrics in your bulletin, then you can go ahead and delete that. The next One down is also a rubric. The sign of the cross may be made by all in remembrance of their baptism. In this case, I don't have the baptism option in this particular service, so I'm going to delete that. You can just click delete, and that rubric then is gone. The next section that kind of highlights here, when we click on it, this is telling us it's the invocation. Once again, you can have a caption there. By default, it's not showing, but you can click the button for caption. It puts invocation there. You've got the next couple buttons, text or none. You can edit this invocation. You can move it or delete it. We'll talk about editing maybe a little bit further when we get into, I think that might be more on Thursday's session when we're talking about customizing elements. The next section down, when we click on it and bring focus to that element, it's saying that's the exhortation. So you're starting to see some similarities. The toolbars, many of the same buttons are available. Adding the caption, that puts exhortation there if you want that. You have text or none, edit, move, and delete. Let's continue going down the order of service. We've got another rubric here. I'll keep that there. Here's another rubric. I'll go ahead and delete that one. I'm going to move along a little bit faster here. This element, when we click on it, it's telling us it's the confession of sins. And we've got, again, the option of adding the caption, text or none, edit, move, or delete. But one additional option you'll see here is this blue line on the left side. That is letting you know that there is a option in Lutheran Service Book. A lot of times the options are the left side of the page, the right side of the page, and that's letting you know that for this confession of sins, there is an option. We can click on that blue line or the little blue triangle here at the top, and it then displays the options. So you've got the top option here, which is probably the left side in the Lutheran Service Book, or you've got the bottom option here on the right. If I choose that option here down at the bottom, then what we have in this option set, the top is considered the confession of sins, but in this case, the bottom is the declaration of grace. If we move back to that other top option here, once again, the top is the confession of sins, but clicking on this one, that's the absolution. So this is an options showing you a secondary option that is available, and you can choose between the top one or the bottom one in this case. We'll stick with the top one here. That includes the absolution. Then we have another rubric. We've got another heading. Clicking on that will allow us to either move that or delete it. I'll go ahead and delete this service of the word. Then we have the introit, and clicking on the introit opens up a tab for the introit, and you'll notice for the introit there's a whole new set of toolbar options available for the introit. We've got the ability to put the caption there or remove it. We've got text or none, and here's a new one, pointing. So for the introit, you can see the little red marks here. Maybe I can increase the size there a little bit. So you can see the red marks and the little asterisks, and that's there for chanting. Go ahead and let's bring this back down to, whoa, that's going larger. There we go. So the pointing is there. Next to, if you click on the button, it will remove those red marks and red asterisks if you're not using chanting. But we'll go ahead and put it there this particular time. Next to that is the psalm tone. So this is where, for the introit, you can click on this and select the psalm tone that you're going to use for chanting. I'll just randomly pick psalm tone D, and selecting that places that psalm tone at the top of the introit. And then there's also another option here for template. We'll talk about that when we get to readings. And then there's the edit option, move and delete, as we've seen before. You'll also notice that there is a option line here on the left side. Once again, we'll click on that. And so here our options are using the introit as displayed by default, or the psalm, or replacing that with just another entrance hymn. So you've got those three choices for this particular element in the service. We'll continue using just the default introit, so I'm going to click on that one out of the three options here. So that places introit right there. Clicking on this in the lower half is just a Gloria Patri, as it says here on the tab. We've got the ability to add the caption again. This time you'll see for this part of the liturgy that there's text, there's melody. Clicking on the melody button will give you then a melody to match along with the words. And then since we're in Divine Service Setting 3 in Lutheran Service Book, there is a 4-part harmony setting that can be added in the displays for 4-part harmony. Now we do get the questions quite often about hymns. Can we get 4-part harmony hymns? And at this point in time, we're unable to include the 4-part harmony for hymns. It's just for the Divine Service Setting 3 liturgy where there's the setting available for the liturgy itself. The other option here is none, and that would just give you the caption of Gloria Patri. So we'll go ahead and just do text at this point in time. Then you've got the normal edit, move, and delete. Let's continue on here. The Kyrie, clicking on that element in the service will give you a new tab. Melody settings are available there. You're starting to get, I think, used to it here. The Gloria and Excelsis, clicking on that, again, caption or not, text, melody setting. Now there is a couple other buttons here. If we say text and setting, in this case, maybe your pastor doesn't chant, and so you can do a text/setting, and that way pastor can speak the part glory be to God on high and the congregation respond. And in this case, the setting is showing the 4-part harmony from Divine Service Setting 3. If we click on this other option here, text and melody, it removes the 4-part setting and just gives you the melody line for the congregation to follow. We'll go back just to the text at this point in time. We've got edit, move, and delete for that one. Clicking on the next element, we've got the salutation and collect of the day. So you're now seeing some more of these same options: melody setting, text/setting for non-chanting pastors, and text/melody for also a non-chanting or singing pastor. And then here is also a template, which we'll talk about here when we get to the Old Testament reading and some other options. Got another rubric here to sit. There's that tab. Now let's talk about the reading. We'll click on the reading, and here we've got some of the same similar toolbar buttons, but let's talk about the template. So the template, the standard response template that we're using right here, gives the reading of the Old Testament, and then you've got the standard response here of this is the word of the Lord, and the congregation responds, thanks be to God. Now there are some other default templates available. We can click on the drop down here under the option template. And so right now, the one that was highlighted is standard response. That's what we're using. The word content appears here kind of as just letting you know that it's bringing in the content from the lectionary. So it's not printing it here in the template drop down, but just representing that that's where the verse would go, and then this is the response that's being used. There are other templates here, the daily office response, oh Lord, have mercy on us, thanks be to God. There's the template here for with introduction for the Old Testament, so we might click on that and select that template. You'll notice that it's showing that it will have an introduction there. The Old Testament reading is from such and such a book, chapter such and such, and it's just leaving some markers there for bringing in the actual lectionary information. And then it ends with, this is the word of the Lord and thanks be to God. So let's go ahead and click that template option instead. And you'll see now that it has added that introduction, and then the content appears here from the lectionary readings, and then how the response goes at the end. So that's what the template option is talking about there at the top. Let's continue going down here. We've got clicking on the psalm. It gives us pointing, the ability to pick a psalm tone. Let's go with psalm tone A. I'm just randomly picking these again. It's got an options bar here on the left. We'll click on that, and it shows that you can have the gradual instead. So let's just say that we take the gradual this time for another change in our order of service. And we'll go ahead and keep the pointing. Let's add the psalm tone of A there. Then we've got another reading here, the epistle. We can change the template if we want. I'll just leave it the way it is. We've already talked about changes to readings. Here's another rubric. Clicking on the Alleluia, we've got melody and setting there. We've got the Holy Gospel, clicking on that element. And it's using the default template, but once again, we could choose from any of these templates that are shown in the dropdown. So I'll let you go ahead and explore that on your own now that you know how templates work. The Nicene Creed, we click on that, the tab changes. Some of the same buttons are available, and then you do see the blue options bar on the left. If clicking on that will then show us some other options. Instead of the Nicene Creed, we've got the Apostles' Creed. We can also select the Athanasian Creed here as well. So we'll stick with Nicene Creed. Let's keep moving along here. There we go. Rubric, let's click on the hymn of the day. We want to select our hymn that gets placed there from the service plan hymns we previously chose. I'll choose hymn 571, and that's got 6 stanzas. Let's go ahead and do 1, 2, 3, and 6. And then we've got our sermon. We click on the sermon. That is just a caption. So what you can do here, pastors, if you would like, you can click here on this particular caption, click in the cell to get your cursor blinking right after sermon, and then you could put your sermon title right here if you'd like, and include that in your order of service. You could also, I guess, include your title here in the subcaption if you'd rather have it on the far right and in italics. That would be another option. So there's just a lot of flexibility here in this editing the bulletin. Clicking on down, we've got another rubric, got the offertory, which we can add melody to, got another rubric, offering. We get to the prayer of the church. Let's click on that option. Shows prayer of the church. And if you remember from yesterday, if you were attending there for that session, we talked about one of the free subscriptions that's available, the Let Us Pray option subscription. And I did activate that in our account yesterday. And so this is the benefit of having that subscription. It's automatically placing in our service this particular week's prayer of the church. And so that is being used here. We've got another heading, service of the sacrament. I'll go ahead and just remove that from our bulletin, or from our order of service in this case. We've got the preface. Clicking on the preface here will give you those options, melody, text and melody, etc. Clicking here, proper preface, clicking on the options will give you let's see here, here we go. It's all written out here on the top option, or just the abbreviated option underneath. Go with the top one. Sanctus, you've got options for melody and setting. Lord's Prayer, you've got options there as well with melody, setting, and combinations of text and setting, etc. Let's continue going down. All of these are going to be very much the same. Let's get to where we got some distribution hymns. We want to make sure that we get some hymns there. I'll choose 827 there. We'll select stanzas 1 and 2. Now communion, another distribution hymn here. Communion can go on longer for some churches, so maybe you need all stanzas. In this case, I'm just going to abbreviate our printed bulletin a little bit. Going on down the order of service, we're getting near the end here. You can click on each one of these different elements and make your selection. Then here, there's a hymn to depart as well. Now, yesterday we had only chosen 4 hymns in our service plan. Let's go ahead and select another hymn from what's offered and suggested underneath. Let's just go on Eagle's Wings here. That's kind of the next one down the line. And so we've got Eagle's Wings here on the end. That's got 4 stanzas with a refrain. And then what rounds out our bulletin is the acknowledgements giving the copyright information for what is all presented above. And so that's an important part of the bulletin as well. So that presents, or that now we've gone through, edited our elements the way we'd like to see them. We deleted some items. Let's say there might be something, maybe there's another communion hymn that you might want to insert, and we'll make use then of this insert tab. Let's actually scroll down to where the distribution hymns are. Let's see, right there. Hymn 571 was one of our, no, that was the hymn before the sermon. Here we go. 572 was our last hymn for communion. Let's say we need to have a 3rd hymn. So we can click the insert option. We've got a number of option buttons here. We want to add a hymn. I can click on that, but you can see where you could add a reading, a prayer, and just a common element anywhere in your service, a right, a proper. You could add another heading, another caption, anywhere in this order of service. I've selected hymn. As I run my cursor down, you'll see that a blue line forms to show where the placement of this 3rd hymn will be. I would want it here after hymn number 2, so I'm going to click here. It puts a hymn placeholder there and automatically then opens the hymn search on the far right. Let's just go with the next hymn after On Eagle's Wings. I'll click on 920, and that puts hymn number 920 as inserted into my order of service. We'll choose stanzas 1 through 4. Let's see, let's say I also wanted to insert before our sermon, maybe a children's message. And that might be after the gospel, let's say. So if I want to add, that would be a caption, kind of like Nicene Creed is listed here. I want to add a caption. So I come to I click the caption button, come to my service, find the placeholder, the line where it's going to show it gets inserted right after the gospel. There's my caption. I can click on it and just type in children's message. There we go, children's message. Now that is another caption that has been inserted into our order of service. So we've got now, let's say, a nice order of service that we can then move on to the next step of preparing our bulletin format. But before we go there real quick, let me do one side thing here and show you what the web view is. Clicking on this web view button, first of all, when you initially click on the button, you need to enable the web view. And what that does is then gives a URL on the internet of where this order of service can be found. So I'm highlighting that link and copying it. Now I could send that link out via email to members who might be watching from home. I could copy that link and put it on my website, and then people clicking on that link on the internet could then see the order of service. But another option that I just wanted to show, which is possible, is you could turn this URL, this web view presentation of the order of service, into a QR code where smartphones could read it, and then you'd actually have the order of service on your smartphone. So let's just quickly go through that. I've kind of got this somewhat prepared. First of all, let you know that I've copied this URL. I'm now going to go to just a free website on the internet called qr-code-generator.org. All I got to do is click here in this cell for the URL and paste it in there, the one that I just copied. And that is creating a QR code. Here is the QR code to my service. I'm going to click save, and I want this to be in an image format PNG, so I'm going to click on that, and it gets downloaded to my computer here locally. I'll save that PNG image. It appears down here at the bottom of my internet browser. I'm going to click on that, and it's opening the image. Now, if you have a cell phone available and you know about QR codes, or just use the camera on your cell phone, go ahead and hold your camera up to that QR code. Right away, my camera on my phone picks up that it's a QR code, gives me a little dot to click on, and then it takes me to that URL of our order of service. Bringing that close to the to the camera, you can see that there's the top of the service, the confession and absolution, and it goes on through the service just the way that we saw it on the display a moment ago. So with a QR code, you can see how simple it is to use a free website to create the QR code. I could put this QR code in our bulletin. I could put it on our website. And then people with smartphones, members with smartphones, could just get the order of service on their phone and follow right there in your church sanctuary, right along with the service. You wouldn't even have to print the order of service in a bulletin format. They would be able to do it with a QR code on their phone. Just a little option there. I wanted to show what's possible here in Lutheran Service Builder, and then making use of the web view. This was pretty big during COVID. As you can imagine, everybody was at home, but the whole QR code idea, I just thought I'd add that in to show you. All right, let's go and talk about bulletin formats. So one of the options here, we're seeing that we're using the current default bulletin format. We're on the document tab, shows that we're on the default format here. We can click the edit button, which would take us to that default format for editing. But another way to get to it, just to show you what's available here, is going to the settings icon in the upper right. Clicking on bulletin formats there will take us to the same place. Here on the left side of the screen, you can see the bulletin formats that are available. Now I have a little longer list for mine here. Most of your Lutheran Service Builder applications might just have the top two, default and large print. Those are default formats that are provided. If you do subscribe to the Creative Worship subscription, you'll get an extra format there. And if you also subscribe to the One and All Rejoice hymnal, you'll have that one there. Those are additions. You might not see those if you don't have those subscriptions. Underneath that are just some other formats that I've created to add to my list, a legal folded version of the bulletin, maybe a bulletin format just that lists all captions, and one for showing the full setting of all liturgy elements. We can click on default, and that will show us what you can edit within the bulletin itself. Here in the center, this is not the service that you and I have been working on. This is just giving us a sample view of some common service elements that we can then make changes here on the right side that will affect what we see in this example here in the center. Instead of working with the default that I've got here, what I want to do is use the options here in the lower left corner. I want to create a new format that is based on the default. I'm going to click that option here, and it puts another option, another report format here on the column on the left. I'm going to click in that, and we'll say that this is Tim's webinar demo format, if that all fits. Yep, there we go. So this is the name of the format that I am creating here from scratch. Now, this is the sample resources that are there. Now let's move up to the upper right corner and talk about what we can edit here. So this will change the styling of your bulletin format. This affects things like sections of your order of service. Clicking on the drop down here, we've got body parts. That would be like the paragraphs of things that are spoken. Headings are those major headings here at the top, like confession and absolution. Caption would be things like invocation, remembrance of baptism, these things that are bolded, that are captions. Subcaptions are these things on the right that are in italics. Rubrics, we talked about places where it says stand, or in this case, the sign of the cross may be made. Those are rubrics. And then the final option is the copyright information, which is at the bottom here, showing that copyright acknowledgements. So those are all sections that you have control of. Once you click on one of these, then the options underneath, you can change the font, you can change paragraph, if it's justified left, center, or right. So let's kind of play with some of these options just so you can see how it affects the sample in the middle. If we choose body, let's go ahead and go to one of the other fonts. Let's just take something near the top. Let's go with, I was thinking maybe Arial, but that's a little bit, let's go with Candera here. And so now all of the body type has changed to Candera in our samples. If I then go to headings, which are currently this confession and absolution, that's set up as trebuchet. Let's make that Candera as well. Click on that. So now that has changed the type style of all of our headings throughout our order of service, or throughout our bulletin, I should say, as a whole. These are global settings. All captions, that's set up as trebuchet. I can, at the top here, instead of going through the scroll bar, just begin to type in Candera and it will filter the list. I can select that for all captions, all subcaptions. Let's just go fully Candera. So now the subcaptions are Candera as well. Let's go with rubrics being the same. Rubrics are now Candera, and then the last section here is the copyright. Let's scroll down. First of all, see that it's here, and that's Verdana. Let's go ahead and change that to Candera as well. And so that has changed that type for the copyright information. All right, I think that's maybe the copyright here is actually talking about some of the smaller text here underneath hymns, which are also showing copyrights. Because I really didn't see this, I think had already changed with the body, but any copyrights that are referred underneath service elements, that's what I just changed here as well. You can then, with any of these, you could, let's say we go back to body here, since there's a lot of type here, we could change that to bold. And so like the body of the hymn changed to bold. We could go to one of these sub-captions here, which is like the stanzas, the LSB 186. That's it currently italics, but we could make that bold, take away the italics. And so that has modified that. I'll go back to italics here without the bold. We can, let's click on, well, not click on, let's go to headings here. Let's just talk and watch this confession and absolution. We can make that bold. We can make that italics. You might want to underline headings. You might want mixed case, so that's the way it is right now. Capital letters for the first letter. We might make it all caps. So now it reads confession and absolution. All lowercase, if that's the way you want your format. You could also change the color to a red by clicking on the color dot, click red, and now your heading is in red. Now, red is mostly saved for like readings and when Christ speaks, and that there's a setting for that. So we'll go ahead and just keep this black, but I did want to point out that you could change the font color of your whole bulletin if you print it in color. Then we've got paragraphs. So right now it's aligned left. If we went align center, I'm sorry, let's go to body parts here. There we go. And then we want to align center. Now you can see where everything in the body of elements is centered. If we want to go left justified, now it's all aligned on, I'm sorry, on the right, not left justified, but right justified. And if we wanted, let's go back to left justified here. If we wanted this option here just to justify, what that does is, watch this paragraph here. You'll notice that it ends at different spots here, but clicking on that button will kind of box it out and extend some of the lines a little bit further. So it's a nice boxed paragraph then instead of just only being aligned left. Then you can also change by hovering here the space before paragraphs or the spacing after paragraphs. Then the left indent or the right indent. If you hover your cursor over the control a little bit, it will let you know what it is. This is line spacing, so you can change your line spacing. You can see that it's affecting what's here on the side. Go ahead, just keep it with 1. And that's what you can control here under style. Layout talks about the page layout itself. This again is an example, not our service that we've been working on. You can use 8.5 by 11. You could use 8.5 by 14. If it's 8.5 by 14, maybe you want to change its orientation to landscape. So then you've got it going a landscape. Most of the time, 8.5 by 14 then is folded. So now this is showing you an 8.5 by 11. I'm sorry, 8.5 by 14. Let me get a drink here, excuse me. 8.5 by 14 legal size paper, but we might want it folded. So this is showing you the page size like the left side, and then the exact same would be for the right side as well. You can play with the margins, top, bottom, left, and right here in the page. You can also play with some of the music here. Now there is an option to automatically scale music. Let's see, I'd have to have some music showing me here. Let me jump ahead for a moment, go to a hymns to show melody. Now let's go back to layout. So here you'll notice for a hymn with the melody that the margin is here, located here on the left and located a little bit here on the right. If we automatically scale, it should bump this out to the width of the paper. Let me click the box, and there it just enlarged the melody a little bit, which if you'd like to have it automatically scaled to the width of your paper, no matter what it is, no matter what you've chosen, it will expand it to the width. That's what you'd want to use the automatic scale option for. If you uncheck it, then you have a fixed scale, and you could minimize that. You can see how as I'm clicking on minimizing, it's changing the size of that hymn melody presentation there. So I'm going to go back just to, I think it was 1, and it's close to the edge there. But again, if you're printing melodies, I would go with automatic scale to make it as large as possible there. So those are the things you can control with layout. Then finally here, your control of content. And so here is where you can control globally across the whole bulletin format if you want all headings to be visible. If not, uncheck the box and all headings disappear. If you want rubrics as globally across your whole bulletin to be visible, check the box. If you don't want them, you could just remove them all here. That way you don't have to remove them within the order of service itself. The way we did earlier, we were individually removing the rubrics at times. If you just want them all visible or all removed, come here to the bulletin format and make the change. Then there's a section here for all hymns. You can make the hymns visible or not. You can change the content to be text, so it's just the stanzas themselves, or globally all hymns to automatically show melody. That way you don't have to do it earlier individually like we did. It will automatically show you the melody, or just none if you don't want any of those, and then it will just be like a caption here for each hymn. So you can set those settings appropriately. To show the caption or not, default, always, or never. So that's the caption here, 655, Lord, keep us steadfast in your word. So this will set it globally. The caption format, whether you want the name of the hymn or the role of the hymn. Let me click on that for a moment. So watch this right up here, 655 Lord. I'll click on role. And now instead it shows hymn of invocation instead of the name. And so you've got those choices. Let's see here, caption, role, or role and name. So in this case, selecting that, it would be hymn of invocation, colon, 655, Lord, keep us steadfast, the name. Let's just go with name at this point. Then the subcaption, that's what's shown here. Do you want stanzas there? If you hover over this field, you'll see some other options. The 4 options, hashtag page, that would show the page number there. Hashtag STS, hashtag is stanzas. The package is another option, and the reference, which is used mostly for scriptures. So those codes are used with some of the other elements, but not hymns per se. Hymns, you'd probably want stanzas in this case. Or you could do page number if you'd like to show where it's in. Well, of course, you've got 655 here as part of the name. Then to show stanzas numbers can be selected or removed. And then if you remove it, then the stanza number won't be there any longer. Omit number from caption. So right now here we see 655. We want that omitted. Now it's just Lord, keep us steadfast. No 655 in front of it. So those options you have for hymns. For the liturgy section, whether they're visible or not, whether there's just text, melody, or setting if it's available, or none. Again, the show caption of all liturgy elements, the default, always or never. Those are your options. You can play with this on your own time to see how it affects things. The subcaption, we got those same subcaption options. Use symbols for speakers. So you'll see here for the invocation, pastor, congregation, unchecking that. It will then spell it out, pastor, congregation, instead of P and C. So that's what that option is for. Emphasis, decision fields. Let's see here, the remembrance of baptism is showing name and his and her. To, let's see, unchecking that, it will take away the underline. Emphasizing those decision fields just helps bring a little more attention to that underline section where you would fill in who's being baptized. Then finally, here on the right is the proper section. Whether you want all propers visible, that would be your readings, psalm, introit, and things that you can control globally. Here, if you want the text, the melody, or setting, again, whether the caption is shown always, never, or just the default setting. For caption format, if you want the name, the role, or role and name. The subcaption in this case for propers would be reference, which is related scripture. So that will show, that the reading is from the Gospels or is from Genesis for the Old Testament reading, and it will show that in the subcaption here on the far right. Chanting, you can set that globally. So all liturgy or proper elements that have chanting, you can put the check mark there and it will always show, or remove it and it will never be there for your bulletin format. And then the show verse numbers in your readings. So I know a lot of times people ask, well, where are the verse numbers? Well, you can check it in the bulletin format so that they're always included. So show verse numbers. Let's see. Let's also look at the show headings here. We can click that and they'll show headings like the Beatitudes in this case. And then the final option here to show words of Christ in red. Let's check that box and then it would appear in your bulletin in red when Christ speaks. So those options are all in the bulletin format. Once you've made your selections for your particular format that you have, then you click Save in the lower right corner. That's where we're at. We click save. Then that format will have been saved. Now, a moment ago, let me make a change here. Let's add the words in Christ. When you make a change, any change in your bulletin format, a little dot will appear. In fact, if I go to one of these other formats here for a moment, you'll see that it's a little blue dot in front of my webinar format. And that just means that there's changes that have not been saved for that format. So we'll want to click on that, make sure that that dot disappears by clicking on save. All right, now that we have that format created, boy, it's at the top of the hour already, I apologize. Let's kind of close this up here with exporting this order of service with the bulletin format that we selected. So we'll click on the drop down, and here is that new bulletin format that I just created. We'll click on that. That is changed. If you remember, the font I used throughout is, I think it was Concordia. So now everything has been, all of those changes have been applied, and now we see everything in Concordia. I can click the export button, click export to Microsoft Word, decide where I want to put it. I'll put it on my desktop in this case. It's down here in the lower left corner. We'll click on that. I'll bring over Microsoft Word. And so here is the bulletin. We'll expand the view here. And the bulletin, page 1, page 2, right on down the line. All of those changes that we made, including the words of Christ in red that's showing up here that I put in my bulletin format. So I could then print this off. I could add a cover page and back page in Microsoft Word. You can't do that in Lutheran Service Builder, but you can do it in Word. Wanted to quickly show you ways of using this option then. Once you have other bulletin formats created, like I've got one set up that all it was captions. In fact, before we go there, let's go back to settings, bulletin formats. If I click on my all captions, you can see that I've removed really all of the content, and all that we're seeing is captions here. If I go to content, that's where we'll see it. So for headings, make them visible, rubrics, no. All hymns, make them visible, but no content, no text, melody, just no content. All liturgy elements, no content. All propers, this section here, no content. And I save that, and that's where I get this bulletin format. So now with the order of service that we're currently in, right now we're using Tim's format. All I need to do to, maybe there's a different bulletin that you need to print out, and it just has captions. All I need to do is select my all captions format. And now in this case, we overrode some of the hymns here by making selections of stanzas, but everything else for the most part is here in just captions. In fact, if I go, let's say, out to the main calendar view, let's choose the next Sunday, Pentecost 4. Just going to quickly go through this, plan this service. We've got the lectionary readings. Let me just pick my order of service. I'm not going to worry about hymns right now because my format is just all captions. So I did choose Divine Service Setting 3. I'm going to go to prepare a bulletin. There's the stock Divine Service Setting 3. I select all captions, and that's my basic bulletin without any other content. There's some tweaks that you'd want to make, but you could certainly then, you can see how fast it is that hardly any time at all that it takes to put together a bulletin once you've gone through the whole process initially one time, making the edits and changes that you've wanted. Let's see, let's go back. I'll use another option here. We'll go up here to the menu here. Let's go back to the service plan. My calendar here is on the left. I'll go back to this third Sunday after Pentecost. Let's see if there's anything else I want to cover. I know that we're at the top of the hour, a little past the hour. Let's call it right here. And because I want to allow for time just to look over some questions and things that might be worthwhile talking about. Let's see, let's go back. All right, so there are a number of ways of reaching out to us in support. You can use our online help center, which is available there from the lower right corner of the Lutheran Service Builder application in that circle with the letter I in it. You can also access chat there from the information center in the lower right corner. You can call us at 800-346-6120, Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 5. And then also through email at support@cts.cph.org. I did want to wrap up today saying that we've covered now 2 training sessions. Service planning and global search is done. Bulletins and bulletin formats was completed today. Tomorrow, Wednesday, we have presentation and presentation formats. So if that applies to you and your church, make sure you attend tomorrow. And then finally, Thursday, we'll cover My Worship resources and other add-ons. That's a popular one as well. So hope to see you on Thursday. Questions and answers. Please type any of your questions into the GoToWebinar questions window. Remember that a recording will be emailed within 48 hours. It might be a little bit longer than that, as I mentioned earlier. And then if you are watching this recording at a later date, please send your questions to support@cts.cph.org. All right, let me take a quick look at the questions. If you need to go, I certainly understand. I went 7 minutes over the hour. I apologize for that, but thank you for attending. I did want to say that. Thank you for watching today. I am going to stick around just a little bit longer to review some questions. I know that Taylor has been working on many of those throughout the presentation, but I might highlight a few of those questions here. I know that a lot of you like to hear other questions that were asked, and I wish we'd have a format that we could do that, but it does take a lot of time to go through questions and explanations, and it would just lengthen this hour-long webinar time slot a little bit further. So let me take a look at some of these, see if there's anything. A lot of times questions that are asked are covered later on in the presentation, so some of them, they were already answered besides Taylor doing it. And Taylor, thank you for answering questions today, helping us out. All right, yeah, that one was answered in there. All right, Casey earlier in the presentation asked, with the intro, is there an easy way to make it a responsive piece? If that's something of interest, we are going to be covering that on Thursday when we're talking about custom elements, making our own custom elements. That's a good question, Casey. Let's see. Yeah, that was answered later on as well. That was answered as someone asked about the symbols, you know, C and P for pastor and congregation. We showed that in the format settings. So that one was answered later on in the presentation. Yeah, many of these questions just were answered just after further on into the presentation, and that's fine. Yeah, Marcia asked a good question. I think she might have sent that into the support team earlier about combining stanzas of hymns. Some of those hymns in the Lutheran Service Book, like hymn 517 and 18, are the same melody. They're, I think, used in different purposes and combining stanzas from each. It's a little bit hard to do that. We don't have an easy way to make those engravings to where you could do that. So in a way, no, but that gets into a little more complex question, which is good to call our support team with more complex questions. I'm not going to show that today, but that's always a good question, Marcia. Yeah, Casey again asked about captions, changing the captions to read. Yeah, she talks about the caption saying gradual instead of saying proper. And so that might have been in the bulletin format itself. You could look at there, or it should by default show gradual, my understanding. Casey, loved the web view. That's great. Thank you for that comment. Yeah, there is Sydney. She's left, but asked about adding contemporary hymns from CCLI to the bulletin. We'll cover that, adding custom hymns on Thursday. So stay tuned for that. We talked a little bit about CCLI yesterday and including that in our licenses. Yeah, Casey asked a good question about adding baptism to the service. Let's see, time 11:12. There is a way to add baptism, Casey. I might get with you later on that one. Jane asked about subcaptions. We showed how to edit those within the presentation, plus Taylor answered that. In hymns, Marcia asked, in hymns, can we have stanzas and scripture references both? That gets to be a little bit harder, Marcia, because hymns, the scripture references that apply to a hymn, there's many of them based on each stanza. And so that wouldn't really be possible. There'd just be too many references there. And I don't think you can use the code there of #ref, #for hymns in the subcaption. Although I'd have to try that and experiment with that to see what it displays. But that might give you some ideas to explore. All right, yeah, Jane asked about this. Let me go ahead and bring this up here. Let's go back to bulletin formats and let's go to Tim's webinar format here and content where we can maybe make, well, let's see, let's say we wanted to add page number to the subcaption. So I can click within the subcaption field here, maybe put a space and then put #PG hashtag. And what that will do is you'll notice here in the example, it puts LSB 655 here on the tail end. In fact, here on the right, I might change that a little bit. I might, let me remove that here. We might put #page #first, then a space, and then do the STS. And that might be more appropriate. That would be LSB 655, stanzas 1 to 2. We could then remove, let's see, for the caption, instead of name, is that what I want? Show caption, caption format, name. That's hymns, default. Oh, we'd probably then remove show stanza number. Oh, no, not stanza number. I'm sorry, omit number from the caption. That way we have, Lord, keep us steadfast in your word. Then in our subcaption, we have the hymn number reference or the page, LSB 655, stanzas 1 through 2. So you could kind of mix it up like that. That would be a variation. Hopefully that answers your question there, Jane. I think you were the one that asked about that. All right. Yeah, it's 11:16 here. Let's go ahead, and I know that there's some other good questions here that haven't been answered yet. We'll try to follow up with each of you with those questions. We could probably spend a half an hour just covering questions, maybe have a Q&A session sometime down the road would be an idea. But let's go back and kind of bring an end to this. Again, I want to thank you for watching. If you've been still connected with me all the way to this point, boy, you are the best for sticking through to the end here. And I appreciate all of your time. I look forward to talking about presentations tomorrow and hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in.